Okay, back at December 9th, 2014, it's now 1:31. I finished the Emerson 19-inch TV DVD player, and now I'm going on to this turntable. This is so gummed up that it won't even retract when you go to eject. And this is a mess. It doesn't go to the right level for the idler wheel. There's your ball bearing race down in there, totally gummed up. It has a brand new diamond stylus that I put in. It's actually an Audio Plus 109. The whole end of the needle, this is the customer's old needle, which is not a needle, it's just the base that held the needle. Okay. The cartridge seems to have good output. Test it with my little amplifier down there. Underneath here, I did take this cam wheel off, and there's a big metal cam wheel that it drives, and it's some kind of an indexing thing with this nylon plastic piece that slides along in it. Everything here has to be taken apart, cleaned, and re-lubricated. Somebody cut this and spliced it. I don't like that. It looks like somebody took the motor out at one point. Actually, this motor has been replaced. This has been replaced. Alright, I'm probably going to have to take that motor apart and clean the bearings and relubricate it. There's the model and serial number of the turntable right up in there. I figure this is somewhere around late 60s, early 70s. It's made in England. Probably a Collaro. Well, anyway, I'm going to get down to business, taking this apart and cleaning it, and go from there. Okay, it's time for a little bit of a camcorder view of what things are here. I'm going to take this thing apart. That's the tower for reflecting the speed. This is all going to be taken apart, cleaned, and re-oiled. Look at that gunk. Oh, God. I'm going to take this motor out and unsolder it or untwist it, whatever they did here to put this one in. This spring is of interest if that goes back the way it was. There's another vertical spring here to pull this up and down. That's hooked onto the chassis to this little white metal hook right here. So we can undo the spring. It hooks down in the hole like that. We can leave it right on there. I don't think it's going to fall off. Okay, there's a C-clip here. Okay, I just took this little mechanism out. On this threaded part on the top, this little Tonearm nut was on there. It went on just as it faces me. It's probably a stop, but this is a white metal assembly that I think may even be cracking, or it's just severely jammed. This thing will not, this adjustment here for the height of the idler wheel will not move. I don't want to stress it and crack the white metal. Then I'll really have some trouble. I'm going to leave it alone and hope it lines up with what I've got. Down underneath here, here's the notched speed selector. It's basically a spring that rides along a piece of nylon plastic that's greased. There's a C-clip and a washer holding it down on there. I'm going to remove those. I'm going to clean that all up and put that back. I'm going to look up inside this tower here where the on-off reject and the speed select is and make sure all of this stuff is free. This looks like it's really, really gummed up bad. Okay. Okay, here's another possible pitfall. This on-off reject goes down underneath to this big plate. And the way to get that plate off, you have to remove this spring right here. And you have to know that it goes back in this way. It hooks onto the chassis. I don't know if it's going to fall off or not, but here's the little slide. That slide will probably come out in your hand. Yeah, it will. It's got a little end on it there. Hooks down in that slot. That's got to be clean too. Alright, now, without stopping the camera, I'm going to flip this over and show the bottom side. Here's the on-off reject. And it's got a little bit of goo, you know, it's not free. And there's a spring here that looks like it anchors everything down onto this pivot point. So what I'm going to do while I'm on the camera is pull this down and try to unhook it. Actually, I think needle nose pliers might work better for that. Come in here with the needle nose pliers. Actually, I'm going to try it this way. Yeah, that looks even better. Okay, the needle nose pliers push it down. This thing's going to take off like a rocket if it gets free to fly. So what I'm going to do is get it into my hand first. See how that hooks on there? So we don't forget, it hooks into that hole, and then it goes down into there and hooks on there to hold the thing together. I'm going to set it down here with all the other stuff. This is now free to come off, I believe. There's two layers of it. There's this one on the bottom that seems to operate the switch. We'll take that off and set it aside. And there's three things. There's something driving this piece here. I'm going to take this piece off. Oh, that's the actual eject hook. That's very critical to be very clean. Okay, now this eject hook, as I turn it, it's going to come undone from that piece on the top. See? It hooks back on there and turns. We'll set that one aside too. Now this one here, that's your eject mech. Alright, now up top here, here's the last piece, which you have to push in on the power switch a little bit to get it to come off. Then it comes off like this. I'm going to turn it and take it off. I'm going to set that down over here too. Yeah, this is definitely gummed up in here. I'm going to take that apart and clean it. But I think I'm going to turn this and take this rod off. Turn it and take the rod off. See, it hooks in that hole like that. And the other end of it looks like, it's hard to get this camera aligned with what you're doing, like that. We set that aside. Now, I'm going to clean all of this shit up over here, and then fix this tower. That thing is gummed up. Okay, here's the deal on this off-on reject. It's got a little bit of gumminess to it, but it's going to be down in this, like a volume control shaft with a nut mounting it. I think if I get some oil down in there, that's going to be fine without ripping this thing all apart and risking smashing off this knob up top. Well, this is a fun thing to do on December 9th with the storm coming. Restoring this late 1960s Magnavox Collaro turntable. Customer brought in. All the pieces are removed. I've done videos as I took it apart so I can see what the hell I'm doing to put it back. A lot of work here. Somebody replaced the motor with a different one because the wire sizes are different. It's obvious. You can't get in that switch and change the wires, so that motor's definitely not the one it came with. But it runs on speed. Okay. back to work. Okay, before putting all this stuff back in there, I'm going to attack this here. Probably not a good idea right now, but this plastic piece here is badly gummed up. Wherever that is pivoting down inside is badly gummed up, and this wheel almost will not turn. There's a wiring holder here that snaps in through this hole that you got to put back. I'm going to take off 1/4 inch hex bolt here, here, and here, and a Phillips screw here, and remove this big cam wheel here. This is not going to be pretty. This thing rides with a tonearm. That is just a massive mechanical disaster. Maybe you don't want to take it off now. I don't know. I gotta look at this closer. That's scary as hell. Okay, we're back. I put all these pieces back, except I didn't put the idle wheel on. That's last. These 3 plates that slide together, the middle one has to hook onto that piece on the top. So this has got to be taken apart and rehooked. But I have to leave it because all this stuff depends on it underneath. And this is the bottom 3 bolted on bracket that covers the cam wheel and the spindle. The spindle comes down to the bottom here and is actuated by this sliding that drops the records. Okay. These pieces are severely gummed up. This will stop this thing cold. Alright. I'm holding these pieces together in my hand so I know how they go. Like that. Okay? Now, I've got to show how this tonearm pivots, because it is critical. When the cam wheel turns just far enough, it allows this piece of the tonearm to move. And it's also dragging a little slide here so that when it reaches the end of the record, it will catch the cam on here with a turning platter gear and start this whole thing turning to go through the reject cycle. And it can't go through the reject cycle because this is severely gummed up. Now, this pivot here is quite critical because it can have absolutely no friction, or this thing will skip all over the place. Okay, see, there's all kinds of adjustments here. There's one on the very end of the shaft, and then there's a small 3/16 hex bolt going down in there, and this piece here that drags the reject also has a hex section to it. Looks like that may be adjustable as well. See it moving that slide? Okay, this is how it's supposed to be in there. Now, to get this cam wheel out, I think I may have to remove this stuff here. And that's scary as hell, because if you screw up this pivot for the tonearm, you are dead. Okay, let's see what's going on. Give it a try. Oh, here's a big problem here. This plastic piece connected to a metal shaft that goes into the cam wheel, that is severely gummed up. That's got to be pulled apart and cleaned. This plastic cam wheel that's driven by the turntable platter, there's a bunch of pieces there. Some go up top and hook onto other things. All this has to be documented. Okay, here's another big pitfall. I took the plastic cam wheel off. This is what's on the bottom of it. But down underneath it, there's this little piece the slide that goes up on the top. That's the piece that actually has to hook through this hole up here, right there. This hooks through the hole, and you can see how the spring is hooked on. It has got to go back that same way. And it is badly gummed up. and it's about to fall down through there. Just so we know where it belongs. There's a video. Okay, this cam wheel, the Tonearm Pivot may be stopping it from coming off, but even more concerning is what's underneath it. Let's move this cam wheel out of the way, put its C-clip that belongs to it on top of it without dropping it on the floor. There. Alright. Let's take another look at the top here. Well, actually it's the bottom. The what's underneath that big metal cam wheel? What's gonna hook into a groove? You got all this shit on the top that follows the tone arm. And there's one plastic piece. Oh, that plastic piece is a mute switch to turn off the audio while this thing's rejecting. Unbelievable. They went through that trouble. Well, nice. The Grad I had, the AT60, did the same thing. They were concerned about noise while it was rejecting. Okay. There's some kind of rollers down underneath there that push on the cam wheel. I'm sure all of that is totally gummed up. And that's part of a piece here held in by a bolt. See the bolt? There's the pivot right there. That's the shaft going through the cam wheel. And there's a bolt right beside it to mount it to the frame, to the chassis. But you can't get to that until the cam wheel's been removed. And to remove the cam wheel, you're probably going to have to remove the Tonearm Pivot, which is probably a freaking nightmare. Right here. Well, I'm going to look it over. I just wanted to document where all these things are that could be a problem. Okay. That Tonearm Pivot is going to be difficult if you don't know what happened here. This is the C-clip that holds this white metal piece that rides the cam. It's spring-loaded, and it is spring-loaded tight. This vertical spring is pushing very hard on this white metal piece. I'm going to take the C-clip and the spring and set it aside over here by the plastic cam wheel. And there is a washer, a plastic washer down underneath here. And see, I'm lifting it up. There's the plastic washer. And that's all there is. This is badly gummed up. This, I believe, well, let me set it over here beside its spring and C-clip. This may allow me to pull the whole metal cam wheel out. If not, I'm going to have to go back and look into this here. That looks like it's held onto the tower with a bolt. But anyway, I'm going to try to carefully work this big metal cam off of the shaft. Actually, I think I'm going to put some toluene on the shaft to get it to soften up the grease so I don't have to really stress this thing out. Okay, I just had an accident. I spilt my toluene onto the keyboard and table and down onto the boxes and shit here. I'm going to have to leave the room because this shit is no good to breathe. But I wanted to make note. This cam wheel, there's this little shaped washer going over the top here, like that. I'm going to get upstairs and get away from these fumes. This is December 11th, about 9:36 a.m. I finished this Magnavox turntable, and it seems to be running beautifully. It's exactly on speed, and the landing is correct. It's tracking at about 4 grams, 4.5 grams. The tricky part was getting the height of the tone arm, which was done by this 3/16 screw, screw down in there. Hard to see with the arm. You can't see it with the arm over on the record, only when you move it back. Okay, now here's the critical part. Will it reject when it goes to the center of the record? There it goes. Now it's going to look for more records. No records found, then shut off. Perfect. Now I'm going to repeat the whole thing with a 33. Okay, I just put the retainer clip down in there. I'm going to switch this from 45 to 33. And put on a 33 album. This is Diana Ross live at the Caesar's Palace. Put the stabilization arm on there. Turn it on. Turn a little further to reject. It's going to check and see if the record's up there. Found it. Drop it. Come down. Land.